Here.
So Dr. Pooja Kamar is a consultant cataract and refractive services at Narayan Netralaya and is very actively involved in the translational research. And she's the best person to talk on biomechanics and how it aids as a screening tool. So let's on to you, Pooja. And
Thank
then
you, ma'am.
after that, we follow the same sequence. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, and all the colleagues for letting me do my talk earlier. I'm going to be talking about biomechanics and how it is important and going to be one of the most important tool in our practice when we decide whether to do a refractive surgery or not. At the outset, I have no financial interests in whatever I'm going to be speaking about. It's just experience. So I'm going to be covering my talk into these 5 topics: basics, applications to practice, is this the real picture, future, and the summary. In basics, understanding biomechanics is extremely important because it's based on the principle of 2 things: the tangent modulus and the secant modulus, and it's a combination of Young's bulk, shear, and the modulus and the Poisson's ratio. And this is how it measures the corneal biomechanics and gives us the true strength of how the cornea is, if it's strong enough for us to go ahead and do a refractive surgery. If not, then if not strong enough, then we should avoid it, because to avoid the risk of ectasia in future. So there are 2 machines which helps us in measuring biomechanics. One is the ORA, which is the ocular response analyzer, and the Corvis ST, which is the dynamic Scheimpflug analyzer. Ocular surface analyzer, response analyzer is nothing but it gives us the biomechanics in 2 forms: the corneal hysteresis and the corneal resistance factor. It is, if the value is abnormal, of course, it's a weak cornea, and if it's normal, then you can go ahead with the surgery. But ocular response analyzer has a lot of its challenges because it measures the strength in 2 dimensions and doesn't give us a detailed analysis about what to take into consideration, what not. So then came the Corvis ST, and it gives you an array of parameters like the and through different maps, like dynamic corneal response, Vinciguerra screening report, the CBI TBI map, and the biomechanics comparison display. So I'll go step by step. The dynamic corneal response map, it first of all gives you the whether your scan is done in the correct way or not. What is your applanation at the initial state, just when the air puff is fired, and what is the deformation amplitude at the highest concavity. So it gives you an array of parameters and how much seconds it took from the first spot of the air puff till the highest indentation. So it tells you whether the cornea is normal or abnormal. And one of the parameters which you can see here is deformation amplitude. Anything less than 1.2, that means your cornea is stronger. Anything 1.2, that means your cornea is on the weaker side. Of course, that's not just the only value, because you do have to correlate it with the IOP and the pachymetry, because a higher pachymetry can give you a pseudo less value, and a lower pachy can give you a pseudo high value. So you have to be very careful and always correlate the biomechanics with IOP and pachymetry when it comes to it. And these are the different parameters. I said, there are phases from the starting of the air puff till the cornea comes back to the normal shape after the air puff applanation. And it has various values which we need to know, but the most important is the deformation amplitude. The second map is the Vinciguerra screening report. Again, a very important map because it gives you an array of information. Basically, it gives you the information on Corvis biomechanical index, which is a very important parameter, and it's a combination of deformation amplitude ratio, the integrated radius, the Ambrosius relational thickness, and the stiffness parameter SPA12. And a combination of it gives you the CBI. When you combine CBI with your tomographical parameters from Pentacam, along with BADI, it gives you the total biomechanical index. Any value of CBI of less than 0.5, that means it's normal, and 0.29 less than 0.29 is normal, and it has an extremely good sensitivity and specificity. So you can take this values into consideration while planning your surgery. Also, it has a color coded system here where you can see if the green it's normal, the yellow is suspicious, and the yellow is abnormal, and you can take a call whether the cornea is strong enough for us to go ahead and do a surgery. If not, whether to do a PRK, if not, whether to do a phakic IOL. And I'll give you a small algorithm at the end on how do we go about taking these parameters into consideration for deciding which surgery to do or not. Another new parameter is the stress strain index, which is actually derived and validated both experimentally and clinically. It is a finite element simulation. Actually, it's nothing but it measures the strength at various multiple points in the cornea. So it gives you the true strength of the cornea, and the curves are representative of the interesting elastic properties of the cornea. If the curve is shifted to the right, that means the cornea is softer. If it's shifted to the left, that means the cornea is stiffer, and the normal value would be 1. So how do we apply it into practice? Again, like, you have Pentacam comparative maps to see whether the patient is stable or progressing, or if we are dealing with an ectasia, or to decide the post cross-linking outcomes. You can also do the same in the biomechanical comparative display, where it will come to know that from the first visit, whether your cornea has become softer, whether there is no change, or whether it's become stiffer. So it helps us to know whether, how is our treatment working, whether it's working or not. And if we have kept the patient on observation for keratoconus, it also gives you an idea whether it's become weaker or it's the same. This is an example of post-TPRK cross-linking, where after a topoguided PRK plus cross-linking, the cornea has actually become stiffer, and that shows that our cross-linking is working. So this is how you can use the tool in our practice to know what is happening with your treatment in practice. So let's discuss some cases. This is actually, if you can see here, it's a completely normal topography with technically no posterior elevation. Your bad D is on the suspicious side, and the CBI, TBI normal. This is yet another case where the similar looking topography, no posterior elevation, but your parameters are suspicious. So now what do we do in the such confusing cases? What is the true picture, whether you should believe the biomechanics or not? I'll just show you polarization, what is the true picture here, what we are seeing. So we did some work on collagen imaging, which is the polarization sensitive OCT, which actually gives you the orientation and the strength and the density of collagen in the cornea, and we correlated it with biomechanics and the bad D and the TBI, that whether this bad D, CBI, TBI are trying to tell you the truth or not, because it is actually confusing a lot of times in your 20% of the cases, and you don't know whether to operate your cases or not. So this is one case where this is the first case which you saw, your topography is normal, bad D suspicious, but your CBI, TBI was normal. So, if you see here, the more the purple or the blue denser color, if you see, that means it's normal, and lighter the blue or yellow or green means it's towards the lower side. So if you see here, the cornea is actually normal, suggesting that yes, your biomechanics is trying to tell you the truth here, and you can go ahead and do the surgery. This is the second case where your biomechanics was suspicious, although normal topography. If you can see here, there is less denser blue color here. That means the collagen is on the weaker side, and your biomechanics is trying to tell you the truth here. And so you will go follow biomechanics and not do a LASIK surgery. And if you want to do, depending on the refractive error, you can probably do a PRK or a phakic IOL for this patient. So it's trying to tell you that yes, biomechanics is telling you the truth in your practice, and it's a very useful tool when you are deciding your refractive surgery. So just to conclude, this is a simple algorithm which we have made. If all the parameters are normal, you can choose a refractive surgery based on the surgeon's preference. If your bad D is suspicious, but the CBI, TBI normal, you can do a PRK or smile extra. If all three are abnormal, then you can go ahead and do a phakic IOL. If just the CBI is abnormal, again, you will do a PRK or a phakic IOL. The future, we are working on this software where we can actually predict the post-operative stiffness, which will help us. And you can, this is a software which is AccuSim, where you decide which, you just enter what type of surgery to do or not. You decide, enter the flap or cap thickness, the optical zone, the refractive error, the epithelial thickness, if you have an A2, and then you feed in the Pentacam and the Corvus parameters. And at the end of it, this is how the simulation works, a small video on it. We are incorporating right now the Pentacam parameters. This is a CSV file. It's just exported from Pentacam. You don't have to do anything exotic here. It's already there in the machine. You just have to choose the location and incorporate in the machine. These are the Corvus parameters. and you enter the flap or the cap thickness depending on the type of surgery you're doing, the flap or cap diameter, optical zone, spherical cylinder, and the axis. And at the end of it, you put it to run in the queue and it gives you the report
1 minute remaining.
after 1 hour. So this is just one case where your topography is normal, just 45 diopters of Kmax, but your bad D is suspicious of 546 cornea. So, and CBI is normal. So what would you go ahead and do this surgery or not? So we actually ran the simulation of different surgeries, and we found that, it gives you the stiffness that if we do a surgery, the post-op stiffness is going to be 85, and which is well within the bell curve. Which means it's within the normative data range. And now we have an algorithm which tells you whether the post-op corneal stiffness is normal or whether it has a low, moderate, or high risk of ectasia. And you can decide which type of surgery to do based on it. And now it's incorporated in the Oculus Pentacam software with biomechanics from the Oculus. So it's in beta testing, but a few months down the line, it will be in the market. So just to summarize, we shouldn't just look at just the Pentacam or the biomechanics individually. We should look both of them together, because both together gives you a real picture of what we are trying to see. It's just a story of 6 blind men and elephant. So you have to combine both eventually in your practice to have the best outcome for your patients. So just to summarize, biomechanics helps in detection of mild forms or early stages of ectatic corneal diseases. It also helps in early detection of post-refractive surgery ectasia, helps us in tracking progression of KC and timely intervention with respect to cross-linking. And of course, AccuSim, which is the AI-based pathfinder, is the real future of what we are trying to deal with. Thank you.
Thanks, Pooja. That was a wonderful talk, and welcome Dr. Merle to our meeting, and others have yet to join. Dr. Sonu Goyal has not joined yet. Now, I would want Praveen to have his questions ready too. I'll take one before that. So from what Pooja says, would you follow the nomogram? What would you all consider? Some of you here in this group are not for the extra procedures being added on. So you notice that the CBI is normal and the BAD is normal, but the TBI is in red. You all have Corvus in your setup. So what would you do? Would you just wait and watch? Or would you think that these are the cases which justifies doing laser vision correction with cross-linking? Anybody could take the answer here. You have to unmute yourself, Namrata.
Pooja has very nicely shown, that if BAD is abnormal or if CBI or TBI is suspicious, then in those cases, it is better to do PRK or SMILE extra and defer towards phakic IOL rather than do a cap or a flap procedure, because that would further weaken your cornea. So I think...
but those of you who are not doing extra procedures, what would you all do when the TBI is in red? Would you like to rely on the Pentacam values and not take the Corvus into consideration is also what I would want you all to answer. Like we also believe in cross-linking, LVC, laser vision correction, but I do know that some of you all don't. So how do you justify, what do you do with these eyes?
So if you ask me, and I told you before that I'm not a real fan of extra procedures, I would go ahead and do a phakic IOL in these cases.
Dr. Kumar?
I want to ask one question. Pooja, this is very good, everything accepted, but point here is you are presenting a case where you're seeing some abnormality in one eye. I would like to have a study where you do a LASIK in the same eye, okay, in one eye, and do something different in the other eye, and then have a relation study. Because here, many of us don't have Corvus. So here you're trying to say we must have Corvus, okay, accepted. But I really want to know who's standardizing this at a retrospective study where in the past we didn't even have Pentacam. Like some of us are doing LASIK since 1999. Pentacam was not so popular, OpScan was popular, and we did not follow all the rules. So, and still so many thousands of patients are doing extremely well. So my point here is, what is our retrospective study where, yes, this could have been this way before and after, and I did this, is what I want to get into. So I understand in one case you do LASIK extra, don't do LASIK extra in the other eye, and then tell me, yes, LASIK extra benefited the patient or did not benefit the patient.
So Kumar, I don't know, Pooja, you answer, want to?
No, ma'am, you go ahead,
Then
please. Ma'am, you
no,
go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead, then I
No,
will.
no, ma'am, please, you go ahead.
No, what I mean to say is to prove that you do PRK in one eye and you do PRK extra in the fellow eye, and then see the result of PRK versus PRK extra 10 years from hence, you do require a huge sample size to do that kind of a study and to prove the efficacy of one procedure over the other, because you require a huge sample size, and plus I don't know how ethics is going to approve it, because one eye you are doing saying I'm doing PRK and the other I'm doing PRK extra because I want to prevent ectasia. So even when we wanted to do one eye smile and one eye LASIK, the ethics was not giving approval even for that, for the contralateral eye study. So I think that will be a challenge always with these kind of procedures to prove their efficacy on a long-term basis.
But one thing is definitely clear: when TBI is in red, we cannot become complacent and think that is just some error in the reporting, because it definitely, India indicates a very thin cornea, or there is some suspicion. That is something which we've realized over time, that a TBI in red has to be looked on with suspicion. And when everything else looks sound, and we have done combined it with cross-linking, we have definitely felt that we did well in these eyes. Ramurthy, you want to add anything?
Oh, just a couple of observations and queries, in the sense that bad D and is more indicative of topography, is more a measurement of the corneal shape, while CBA is more to do with the strength of the cornea. And TBI, though doesn't average the two, takes a bit of both the measurements. I want to understand from Pooja whether she knows what is the amount of importance given to the two different parameters in calculating TBI. And number two is, though these are two different parameters, one is related to shape, another is related to strength, more often than not, you find that there is they go parallelly. There are occasions when there is a disconnect, when one is low, the other is high, but more often you come across eyes where if it is abnormal, both are abnormal, and TBI is also abnormal, which is good, which reassures us that we are in the right path. And occasionally you come across cases where this connection is not there. So what exactly, when you have the interplay of these three parameters, one is strength, one is shape, another is a mixture of both, how do you really evaluate and what kind of importance you give to each?
That's a very important question, sir, what you asked. And of course, I don't know what I'm going to answer. Will agree to what you say. You can always differ. What I feel and what our experience and of course the literature says is that TBI is more drawn towards the bad D value. So even if your CBI is normal, your TBI is a lot of times going to be suspicious, because it's based on it actually, of course, it's a combination, but 60 to 70% of the TBI value comes from your bad D or your tomographical parameters. So we will, of course, go ahead with CBI. But as ma'am said, that if any of the values is abnormal, then you, of course, look and go ahead and, consider a PRK or a SMILE extra. We don't believe that LASIK extra works, because you are creating a cutoff around 20 millimeters. So after creating a cutoff 20 millimeters, even if you do an extra procedure, our experience says it doesn't work. So if any parameter is abnormal, including TBI, then you would probably consider doing a PRK or a SMILE extra for any of these eyes. However, TBI is more based on bad D just than the CBI. So although a lot of times CBI is normal, still your and it's zero. CBI is zero. That means it's completely normal, but your TBI is abnormal because it's based on your thickness and curvature. So always keep yourself on the safeguard which when it comes to medical legal issues. I would also like to answer Kumar Dr. Sir's question when it comes to biomechanics. Biomechanics, yes, we are saying that, what are your outcomes, experience and everything. Yes, a lot of times in the past when we didn't have biomechanics, but retrospectively when we see, a lot of them had abnormal values like CBI and the deformation amplitude and all were abnormal. And we didn't know that time because we didn't have the machine. We have gone ahead and done the surgery. and they are doing fine at 6 or 7 years as well, and or maybe more than 10 years. That is because biomechanics is not just the only parameter, or it's not it's not in isolation. There are multiple factors which affect the biomechanics. How your healing happens. If your patient has a lot of inflammation or dry eyes post surgery, then that means there's a lot of inflammation in the eye, and it's going to impact your biomechanics. So even if your biomechanics is normal, your patient can land up in post refractive surgery ectasia, and which we both have seen in our practices. And if your biomechanics is abnormal, but patient is absolutely fine, no inflammation, wound healing is normal, then the patient is not going to have anything even for 10 to 20 years post refractive surgery. So biomechanics, yes, is a very important parameter, but it's not just in isolation what we are seeing right now. Of course, right now we don't have other parameters in the clinics to see, but in future we will definitely have to incorporate the inflammation and other parts into our practice, because numbers are increasing and we of course have to keep ourselves safeguard. So that is what two things I have to draw here.
I think what Kumar was possibly saying was, that in the past means many years ago, not just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, we've done high amplitudes of refractive error. 16, 17, 18. And some of the cases, I mean, we never got that much of ectasia. Maybe we didn't pick it up at that time and now we are picking it up more. That could be one of the reasons, but that's why he said that, you show the data, where is it? That, you did that and ectasia happened or didn't happen. And
So
I think
the software,
would also agree with the same thing, and so would Dr. Vavekar and Praveen, that we have done higher amplitudes when LASIK came into being, and we got away with a wow factor next day for all the patients.
But ma'am, that time patients were not so, nowadays they come, even if they reach
everything,
and everything, they blame the medical legal, and they scare you to take to court. So you have to be very much careful here. 20 years back, all this was not there. So
No, madam, you were not there 20 years back.
You were not there 20 years. I wanted to say that.
People were very conscious of the vision even 20 years back.
Dr. Praveen, would you want to take a question?
Yeah, no, more than a question, I think a perspective on the movement that we've seen from topography to tomography and now to biomechanics. I think amongst all of these, the fundamental flaw that exists and will always exist for any new technology is the fact that whenever you image patients like this, you will exclude the ones who you think are at risk from developing ectasia or any complications, and do procedures only on those patients who are completely suitable. So when you exclude the ones that you think are at risk, you're not really ever going to test whether this is something that is going to prevent or is, this is actually preventing causing a complication. And for those patients whom you're doing this anyway, without the measurement, you will never know because you don't have a measurement before. I mean, this is true for any new technology that is going to come out. And I think it's only about making a judgment call depending on what you believe in, and trying to actually study smaller subsets than larger subsets. But unfortunately, this is going to be true.
And one last question before we go on to Dr. Chandrasekhar's talk, to question to Pooja and Ramamurthy. Yes, you have something to tell, Dr. Ramamurthy?
No, more a query. Pooja was all the time referring to PRK extra and Smile extra as if they're interchangeable. I know
that's what I was going to ask.
In that. And maybe Rohit also has started believing in it, the Smile extra. I personally have my very serious reservations about it. If you don't believe in LASIK extra, why do you believe in Smile extra? In the sense that, for effective cross-linking to happen, you need oxygen, you need riboflavin, and you need ultraviolet radiation. When you have a thick flap, which is edematous, whether it's a cap or a flap, that's not going to allow enough oxygen to permeate. And most of us debride the epithelium and then go and do a CXL. And why do you say Smile extra is as effective as PRK extra? If at all an extra procedure has to be done, I believe it should be combined with PRK, where there is direct removal of the epithelium and direct access to all these three elements to the stroma, and effective cross-linking can happen along with the laser vision correction. If you don't believe in LASIK extra, why do you believe in Smile extra?
I would agree to you one way that of course, our first line of management is PRK or PRK extra, because we believe PRK, just standalone PRK without extra, is equivalent to Smile Extra or even better than that. But there are some refractive errors when we don't, we technically don't prefer going higher than 6 or 7 when it comes to PRK. Of course, Praveen sir has a huge experience when it comes to doing high diopters in PRK, but we are a little bit scared there. So that is, yes, I agree with you. But why do we believe in Smile Extra and not LASIK Extra? Is because we have done a study, and which I am going to present in AO here, is we have studied intraoperative change in biomechanics. And what we have observed is that there is actually no change after what we have done is, we have created a flap, but not done the laser. We have created the lenticule and the cut, but we have not removed the lenticule. We have made the patient wait for 3 hours, of course, with ethics committee approval. And we have done an intra-op biomechanics. That is after 3 hours of creating the flap and cap. What we observed was that there was no change in biomechanics after the cap cut, but there was 18-fold decrease in biomechanics after the LASIK flap. So that is why, and we are doing extra on this bed. So that is why we feel that, the Smile Extra probably works and LASIK Extra doesn't work. However, for that, we are doing one study, whether Smile Extra actually works or not. And that answer will be able to give you after 3 to 6 months only. But Smile Extra probably works because there is no change of biomechanics intraoperatively when you're just creating the lenticule and the cut. So that is why.
No, but Pooja, if you've not taken out the lenticule, then how do you think? I mean, if you've just left the lenticule there, only not dissected, not taken it out, then it is not going to change. It is possibly all that you're doing is just doing a cut.
But even in LASIK, we have created a cut. We have created the flap. There also, we have not done the laser. And then it's a contralateral eye study. We have not this thing. So that's when in the contralateral eye study, we have found that, there is a 18-fold decrease in the LASIK eyes compared to that of smile eyes. Where we in LASIK also, we have created a cut, but we have not done the laser to correct the power. So that is why we are able to say this.
So
This was
anyway,
shown.
the discussion is in non-ending. I think we have to go on to the next.